Hello and welcome back to Why Does It Feel So Wrong to Be Human at Work? For another honest, sometimes short, but always real conversation about the human side of work. I'm Bree Bartos, and today I kicked the boys out and I'm taking over as your host to ask a question that I've been wanting to ask for a while now. And quite frankly, Pinaki and Chris aren't the best to help me answer this one. Because today we are asking, why does it feel so wrong to be a woman at work? And joining me today are two lovely ladies that I'm very excited to introduce. If you've been listening now for a while, you'll recognize her from BTS episodes 14 and 15. And if you haven't listened to them, I highly recommend that you do. But joining me today as my co-host is Jen Samuel with the new title of Senior Account and Strategic Communications Manager at Local Wisdom. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you, Bree. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be back as a co-host now.
And I'm glad to have you here. And we also have a very special guest joining us today, Regine Nelson, a principal consultant in employee experience and internal comms, author of the Comms and Culture Devotional, founder of Rise and Reign, and a 3-time boy mom. Welcome, Regine.
Thank you. Very, very glad to be here.
Thank you both for joining me for today's conversation. There are many, many different things that we can cover with this topic. Gender in general, navigating motherhood at work, hair and appearance, ageism, periods and menopause. There are a lot of different things that women carry at work that men might not ever have to think about. But the goal of this conversation is not to villainize any gender or anything like that. It's just to bring awareness and talk about the stuff that we usually filter out. But before jumping into all of that, Regine, I'd love for the listeners to get a chance to learn a little bit more about you, the work you do, and what led you to employee experience at Internal Comms.
Yes. So, gosh, where do I even begin? I mean, I've always been a communicator at heart. And so I love talking. I love helping people. I love helping to bridge people together. And so I originally, believe it or not, went to school for screenwriting and was introduced to communications, PR specifically, by my college roommate. She said, "Oh my gosh, PR is totally you. You're all over the place, bouncy, bubbly. You're a people person and you like doing multiple things." And so I took a PR class, fell in love with it, changed my major, but I was still able to write, not movie scripts, but definitely other types of content. And yeah, 20 years later, I'm still loving what I do. Currently a principal consultant for a company called 41. And, you know, it allows me to work all over the world, which some of you may or may not know. I'm moving to Madrid next week, like literally like in 5 days. I'm relocating.
Wow.
There. Yes.
Wow, that's so exciting.
Yes. We're very, very excited. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the story. I've worked primarily in-house at tech and software organizations, but right now I'm in my agency era, which is where I started off. And so it's nice to be able to work on multiple clients again.
Yes, that is awesome. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you and Jen recently, you guys had the opportunity to meet up in person. Is that right?
Yes, we did. After, you know, people like to coin the term LinkedIn bestie, and I think that's the most appropriate way to do that. We started engaging with each other a year and a half, 2 years ago, and we really got along well. And so we did a lot of virtual chats. And when I had the opportunity to come to New York for an event, of course, Jen was one of the first people I reached out to and said, "Hey, we have to get together." And so, yes, I love that. The majority of communicators are super open to networking with other peers and professionals. And LinkedIn has been a great resource for me to build community, to build friendship, and to also share and find opportunities as well.
Absolutely. Yes, I always said you were my LinkedIn bestie, now my comms bestie.
That's
and
right.
I'm so glad we got to meet up in New York.
Yes.
I love that. I lost my train of thought. I have ADHD, by the way. We can talk about that too, you know? But I love that you guys got a chance to meet up recently. I have definitely been following you, Regine, on LinkedIn for a while. You're definitely a name that I see out there often. I was very proud this year when you started posting videos. I know that you posted that was something that you were challenging yourself to do. And as someone who likes to create videos, I'm always proud to see people trying something new. But for today, I'm so glad that you guys are joining me today. You know, being a woman, there is so much that we deal with. But our background also can affect even more what we have to carry with us and balance with us, especially as women as well. And I appreciate you both joining me today to represent and talk about being a woman of color at work as well, because that is obviously something that I do not have experience with. And it is something I want to make sure that voices that we're lifting up and amplifying as much as possible, because I've heard stories. We have a segment on this podcast where we react to Reddit stories that are work related. And there are unfortunately a lot of horror stories at work around women of color and their hair.
Yeah.
And how much people disrespect them and cross their boundaries. And so, I thought a good place to start today was talking about appearance at work, because it really matters to some people if I show up wearing makeup or not, or dressed to the nines, or, if my hair is completely fixed or not. And, I know it's a very important conversation to be had about women of color and their hair at work. And to be able to wear it natural, to be able to wear it in styles that preserve your hair hopefully without anyone caring or even thinking another thing of it. Like, that is the goal. But I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about appearance at work. Because, I feel like this is me assuming. I feel like men don't have to think about their appearance as much,
I don't think so.
When I'm in the airport and I see a man hop on a plane with just a backpack, I'm like, where are your products, sir?
Exactly.
Where are you going and for how long? Like just an hour, I presume.
So true. I had that tendency of always, like, for years, every job interview leading prior to localism, I would have to straighten my hair because it just looks prettier that way. And it does look pretty, but then I get the job. And then when I start curling it, everyone's like, oh, your hair. Then you have to explain what's natural and how you style it. It's natural. I didn't use a curling iron. And those are the things that now, as I've gotten older, like today, it's so hot, I threw it in a bun. But it's like, for years, used to, I don't know, based on upbringing, you second guess. Is this okay? Does this fit? And it's like, just be you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I echo that sentiment 100% because, what a lot of people don't realize, and if you watch my videos, if I change my hair, I always make sure, like, I'm like, hey guys, my hair is different, right? I can change my hair literally every day of the week if I wanted to. Right. And so it's one of those things from a Black woman's perspective, more people are starting to embrace their natural hair. Even having braided styles is something that I started embracing about 3 years ago because my lifestyle changed. I started doing more half marathons, triathlons. And so it's not sustainable to have my hair out, to flat iron it on a regular basis and to protect my hair and obviously my sanity. I got more protective styles in the form of braids that didn't require any blow drying, any flat ironing. Literally wash your hair, condition, towel dry, and just let it do the rest, right? But as my lifestyle has changed, and obviously as I've gotten older, they say as you get older, you don't give, flying Fs or whatever. And I think that's an indication for me as well. But I still deal with oh, you changed your hair. Like, it's always something that has to be mentioned, right? Or asking, did you cut your hair? No, Susie, I actually have styled my hair in a different way. And when my hair is curly, it's shorter because of shrinkage. And when my hair is straightened, it's longer because, again, you're straightening something curly. So it's, explaining these things to folks. And thankfully, unlike a lot of Black women that I know and that I've heard horror stories of, no one has tried to touch my hair without my permission. So
Unfortunately, I've witnessed it before where other people have like reached out and touched, like, my friends who are women of color at work, like, touched their hair unprompted and without permission. I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
I think the rule in general is we don't touch each other at work.
Right.
Yes.
Or anywhere. We just don't touch each other without permission.
Mhm.
But I also, it surprises me how much people think it's okay that just because you have a different style, it's okay to touch your hair.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Or your
Or
clothes for that matter, right?
Oh, wow.
Because if you dress in a unique way, alternative or something, if it's not conforming to what folks are generally used to seeing, they have a tendency to want to reach out and like experience it for
yes.
themselves. And I'm like, I don't think that Harajuku girl wants you to touch her clothes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's not like a sensory thing.
Yeah, right? So, yeah. But as far as makeup goes, I am going to remain a chapstick girly for life. I hardly put on makeup for my videos, and I'm not putting it on for work. If it's a special occasion, I will do that. But I'm also blessed with the black don't crack. And
Yes,
so
you
I
are.
also, at 42 could pass for 25.
You
And there you go.
can. Yes, you
I would
can.
have never guessed you were 42. And I also would have guessed like you had a little like no makeup going on. Like your cheeks are pink, you're glowy,
No,
like
nothing.
you
I
look
actually need to reapply my chapstick. But I just take really good care of my skin by
yeah,
drinking water, minding my business, and getting 8 hours of sleep.
as everyone should.
And remember, minding your business means not touching other people when they don't want to be touched. I want to make sure that's explicitly clear.
And not commenting on their personal lives
That part.
because I have had, I have had some stories. Jen knows I've shared before. One of my like horror stories that I go to often was I was at a product launch party for work, and it was the first time seeing the sales team since I got engaged because they all lived in their districts, and it was the first time we'd all been together. And there was this one gentleman who I actually thought about writing this for a Reddit story for Pinaki and Chris. There was this one gentleman who congratulated me and then proceeded to ask me how old I was, and then asked me if I wanted any kids or not. And then he proceeded to tell me at 27, by the way, that I better not wait much longer because I'm running out of time to have kids.
Wow.
And I think about that often. Now 30, still don't have kids yet, would like to at some point,
Mhm.
But it was not his place to comment on my family timeline.
Like you hadn't thought about it, right? Like, oh, thank God he mentioned it.
I know. Like,
You would have never thought of
goodness.
being
Thank
married
you,
in that.
Craig. If it wasn't for you, I would have never grasped the reality of how time worked.
Yep.
And,
Ageism.
yeah, so like
Ageism right
mind
there.
your business.
Yeah.
You'll look younger.
Yeah. That part. That part.
I was sharing with Bree on the topic of like ageism. When I started in corporate, my very first job out of grad school, I actually was like reverse ageism in the sense that I was only 23-ish and I was there for about 6 years. And I didn't tell people my age, but usually stereotypically women are afraid to say that they're aging.
Yeah.
I was opposite. I didn't want to tell them how young I was because some groups respected me and I didn't want to be treated differently because I was younger. So I just let them assume. And I had a vice president that I worked with that was doing comms. I started as a coordinator. I got promoted to supervisor, launched this new initiative. We had like a town hall style call, whatnot. My very first one. And the VP goes, instead of like saying, wow, great job, she goes, "Aw, ain't she cute?" Because it's, it was a play on a Southern Belle. She was claimed to be from the South, but she's like, "Ain't she cute?" And then she would call me Sweepy. And I'm like, oh, so I'm a supervisor. That's why I'm cute. So I'll be pretty when I become a manager, I guess. But for 6 years that I was there, people were, oh, how old are you every birthday? Oh, a lady doesn't tell. Once I hit 30 and I was out of there, I was so proud to say my age. And after 40, poof, I love it. But it's just like that reverse ageism. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, you're right. I had that happen as well in one of my roles that I came in at a director level. And my manager had to speak to the owner of the company to say, you need to stop calling her kiddo. Because again, they were, just do the reverse math. If I'm 42 and I look, I'm 25, imagine how young I looked when I was 25. Right. And so they were like, wow, yeah, like you're, and I, because I was so young and because it was, pre Me Too, right, where all of these things were happening, I felt like I couldn't say anything because if that's what the president of the company, was used to doing, I guess I just fall in line, right?
Yeah.
Until my manager, whose name happened to be Karen. She was not a Karen, and no, disrespect intended to Karens in general. But she said, you need to stop calling her that. She made a big fuss about it, and true to word, he stopped calling me that during my time there. But, shout out to other women standing up for other women at work when they see something and they say something, because I felt at the time that I was powerless, right? I was limited. Mm-hmm.
Did you feel limited because of age or also being a woman of color?
Both. My boss was a white man. My boss's boss was a white man. My boss, Karen, was a white woman. And, I didn't see him calling anybody else that. But of course, there was no one else that was as young as I was also working, at the company at that level. And so I just, was like, I guess this is just what it is. And, shout out to my father who, when I was 13, when I was about to turn 13, I said, oh my gosh, I can't wait to be a teenager. And my father point blank said, and I feel like he did this to me. He says, sweetheart, you're not going to look like you're a teenager until you're in college. And true to word, that's what happened. Right. So I just assumed that this was going to be my lot in life, a younger looking person, and I have to deal with it. And quite frankly, opposite to Jen, for several years, I lied up about my age because I wanted to be taken seriously. So, there's at least, a few dozen people that are surprised that I'm 42 when I should probably be 55 at this point.
You're pretty close to retirement and you're
right. You know what I mean? So it's a blessing that Black don't crack, but it's also a double-edged sword because then you deal with, ageism, for an extended period of time. But that's a whole nother story. And I've got gray hair now. So like sometimes I leave it as a badge of honor. Other times I'm like, you know what? Let me cover it up, but yeah.
Yes. You both mentioned, Jen, you didn't tell anyone your age. And then Regine, you were telling people you were older than you really were. And, it makes me think a lot about what we are filtering at work. And like the energy that goes into deciding which parts of yourself to reveal, which one to bury, and then to maintain that as well. And, Regine, you did say earlier that as you've gotten older, the F's you've given have gotten fewer and fewer. But, for anyone who might be in the start of their career, might be younger, and they're going through that period of like, gosh, what do I do? Like, I'm new to this position. They're already looking at me like, oh, who's this young girl? Which I've been in that position. I joined a male dominated industry straight out of college. And I dealt with a lot of, just like, oh, who is she? Like, who does she think she is? And a lot of blatant disrespect. What advice would you give to either of you? What advice would you guys give for a woman just starting out in the workforce, or and who, maybe they're trying to decide, do I hide parts of myself? Do I share who I am with my coworkers? Will that get used against me?
I have an answer that may be a bit controversial.
Ooh, I love it.
Only because the topic is super complex. So it's hard for me to give a definitive, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
But I'll preface it by saying, to thy own self be true, know who you are, and then understand the environment that you're walking into, and then act accordingly. Because it's hard to say, share at work, who you are, where you may not be comfortable. You may want to keep a low profile, right? That may not be the culture of the work, right? To share that. And so you have to figure out, and I'm saying this as a person who has ADHD, right? Who's on the spectrum, who always has to be sort of assessing and reassessing her environment to make sure that she's allowing everyone a chance to speak and have a voice. Because I have a lot to say and I want to say it all the time, right? So you have to know how to edit yourself in a way that you are still being true to yourself, because you don't have to be an open book to everyone you come across. And you have to understand who your potential allies are and who your potential foes may be. And so I say all that, right, to say again, repeat, to thine own self be true, and then understand your environment and act accordingly.
I love that.
I couldn't add anything else to that. That was perfect, because it's true. It's like, I think I've shared in the previous podcast that it took through some negative experiences to get to where I am now with local wisdom and just my life to be like, I'm enough, and do you, boo, and be true to yourself. But yeah, you do have to filter and know what's worth sharing. You shouldn't have to say everything because you don't want things thrown against you or people judging you.
Yeah.
But don't put a facade either, Don't
Mhm.
pretend to be something you're not.
Yeah. I think that's both very good advice. In my experience, when I was younger, I wish I would have, allowed for more separation between work and personal. I've always been someone who I want to be everyone's best friend because I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. So I'm like, I want to be everyone's bestie. And so, that's the mindset I went into straight out of college. And if you've heard the episode, My Best Friend Tries to Steal My Job, spoiler alert, it wasn't a real Reddit story. It was my personal story, and I lied to Pinaki and Chris and exposed it towards the end of the episode that it was my story.
That was a
But
deep one.
I look back at that and I'm like, God, I wish I would have just kept some separation between like my personal life and work more, because like I became absolute best friends, spent all my time with this girl who was like a year younger than me at work. We both started just a month apart. And then she tried to steal my job, and like work became really difficult after that, and like having to deal with her. But the universe said, let me just give you a pandemic. So that resolved that issue. But yeah, I think it sucks to have to filter ourselves so much, I think, but it is important to protect yourself and protect your peace, and to remember work isn't life. Work is a means to live your life. At least that's how I look at work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I agree. And to your point, Bree, I mean, I think both personally and professionally, the biggest skill that you can learn, everybody can learn this skill. I don't know how long it takes to master it, but at least to be actively practicing it is discernment, right? Because
You
it
took the
will
words right
allow
out my
you,
mouth.
yeah, it will allow you to see through the facade that others may be putting forth. It will allow you to understand your environment better, other people's intentions. And again, you're not going to get it 100% right, but at least you won't fall into that category of fool me once, right? Shame on me. Fool me twice. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, right? Shame on me. You won't fall into that category. And for the love, the moment that people show you who they are, believe them. And if it's in a way that you do not like, I suggest that you either have a conversation with this person, and if you're unable to, try to minimize interactions with this person, because the amount of people that accept things and don't speak up and then find themselves in a situation that they'd rather not be in is astounding. But discernment has to come to play.
That's great advice.
That word was in my head, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be too churchy, but I was like, Regine will get it if I say discernment. Because it applies both spiritually and, in the world, in the regular, in your day-to-day life. So yes.
Yeah.
I was like, my antennas went up because I was like, do I say it? And Regine said it.
Yeah, I did Google the definition of discernment. For anyone who does not know, who might be listening, it's the mental and spiritual ability to perceive, understand, and evaluate matters clearly. I want to go back. You mentioned that you have ADHD and you are on the spectrum. I have diagnosed ADHD and I'm in the process of hopefully getting evaluated for autism soon. I overanalyze and I see everything way too clearly. I don't know about you, but man, it's like I wish I didn't see things so clearly sometimes because like I can see things coming a mile away. But I would love to talk about like what your experience has been with neurodivergence at work, and if that's was made any more difficult with being a woman, or also selfishly, I'd love to know like around what age did you get a diagnosis if you're comfortable sharing? Because
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
for women, it's really hard to
yeah.
get an ADHD and or autism diagnosis, but especially like a lot of people struggle to get both too.
Yeah. So oddly enough, because we're talking about all about women's things, right? I got diagnosed when I was 33 after I had children. But the people who knew me before my diagnosis always said, well, yeah, I mean, wasn't it obvious? And I said, no, it was not obvious. Right. But at around 33, I stopped being able to mask effectively. And I almost fell apart essentially. And that coincided with which I found out 5 years after the fact was that's when I started perimenopause as well.
Oh.
And so those three things came to a head at the same time, which is important to talk about. But more so than not, since my diagnosis, I have been super transparent about it at work. So that way I can get, additional support if I need that, etc. But what it also means is that some experiences that I had in my earlier years shaped how that could have manifested itself. So for example, I have a company that I joined that I was only at for about 2 months. And it was one of the very first roles that I had post college. And I was let go from that role because I was told that I was not respecting people's boundaries. Right. And so essentially I was oversharing. I was over asking. It wasn't in a malicious way. And I thought like, oh, like, was I being weird? Was this and that? Like, I was trying to understand all of the permutations of why they would think that because I felt like it was normal. Right. But apparently it was not. Right. And so understanding some of those things later on post diagnosis was like, oh, that was a very odd thing to do. But people were not aware as to, even I wasn't aware, right? That I was this type of way. So, I've put that role while it didn't, lead to my diagnosis, it did lead to a lot of self-awareness. And that's when I started taking initiative to say, okay, don't ask people too many questions. Don't share too much about yourself. Don't talk too long in conversations, right? I started putting these sort of blockers and things in place to kind of check myself. So that way I could appear more normal, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I was diagnosed with ADHD in my 20s, like early 20s. So I was grateful that I was able to get it early on in my career after graduating college and everything. But it does afterwards you're kind of just like, "Oh, I see now." And I have a tendency to overshare as well. And to just keep on yapping. And I hate when I have a thought that I need to get out more than anything. And if I don't get it out right now, then it'll be gone forever. And so it just I just like interrupt and I just feel so bad. And I'm always just telling people, I have ADHD. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to do it. Um, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I was going to jump in
Yes.
when you said about when Regine mentioned that perimenopause.
That's
That's the big word that now I have no shame in saying I've embraced it because have never been diagnosed as neurodivergent, but after 35 into 40, I'm like, you start to feel different.
Yeah.
I started dealing with struggling at work and motivation and I'm like, something's off. And I kept being told, no, here's take an antidepressant. That'll help. And then and it wasn't, I think maybe it was it was post pandemic, but finally, like there was a wave of social media that started talking more about perimenopause and menopause. And I just finally went to the right doctors that agreed with me. And everyone else was like gaslighting. No, you're too young. You're still this, you're still that. But you start to feel like, do I have ADHD when you're in the stage of life?
100%.
And it does affect your work. I've been in or the brain fog just with perimenopause.
Yeah.
I've literally been in meetings with people in previous companies that I've known for years. And I'm like, what is their name? The words are not coming out. And you're like, what is wrong with me? And Regine, you mentioned something about sleep before, and that reminded me because I know in your story that you've shared openly, you've gone through some practices to get better sleep habits. And sometimes with perimenopause, you just don't sleep. And it's like, can you really just say, hey, I'm midlife and I didn't sleep last night, so I need to log in later? You can't really do that in all companies, but
Yes. I'm glad that you brought it back to perimenopause because I definitely want to talk about women's bodies. Like women's bodies, like we didn't make the choice to have a period every month. Right. We didn't make the choice to have to go through perimenopause, menopause. We didn't make that choice. But unfortunately, that is the body that we bring to work every day, every month, for a week out of the month. If it's menopause, then it is every day. These are things that, unfortunately, it doesn't matter if I have cramps so bad that I feel like I can't stand upright. Sometimes you got to go to work.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're traveling for work during your period and you have a photo shoot you have to do, and it doesn't matter if you have cramps or not. But why, everyone knows women have periods. Everyone knows women go through menopause and all these things. So why does it feel so wrong to mention at work? Like, why? I've heard of countries having like menstruation leave for like days where their periods are like for people who menstruate periods that are really bad. Like I might potentially have endometriosis. I get really bad cramps. And I would so much rather have like menstrual leave that I could use instead of using my PTO. But I'd love to talk about all of these things because they're looked at as such sensitive topics. And I understand women's health and like it's all tied to reproduction and everything like that, but it is normal. Anyone with a uterus is going through it at any time, most likely, like most of your workforce, like a good percentage. So why aren't we talking about it more in the workplace? Why is it so taboo to tell your boss, hey, I'm in a lot of pain. I can't do this meeting. Thankfully, I'm very lucky in that now I do have a job where I could be like, hey, boss, I don't feel good canceling this meeting. And it's nothing off my back. But that hasn't always been the case.
Yeah. You're not questioned about it.
Yeah. I think, remote work and the opportunity to work remote has helped a lot in that particular area, right? Not just, for cramps and menstruation and things like that. Parents who have sick children as well, who don't need to take off a work day, but just need to be, at home, sort of hovering, if you will. And most recently, I think I've shared this before online a couple of times, is I need to say this because I know we jumped off the topic of hair, but
no, you tell me.
But sometimes it takes a long time for a Black woman to get her hair done.
A whole day.
All day. So, I have been fortunate enough over the last few years to not have to use, for example, a Saturday or a Sunday or a vacation day if the salon happens to be open to have my hair done, right? So I'd get to the salon at 8. I'd do all my meetings off camera. I can be productive, but I don't have to be in the office and I don't have to take time away because my hands are not occupied. It's just my head is.
Yeah.
Right? So again, the same thing with, taking time off if you need it. The menstrual cycle days, like those days to me are so incredible when companies offer that because
Mhm.
there are just some days that you just don't wake up feeling well. And whether you need a day to recover or just a couple of hours, it's great to have the opportunity to say, hey, I'm not feeling well, right? And you don't have to name the
Yeah.
exact reason,
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
as to why you're not feeling well, because again, some people like oversharing, some people don't.
Yeah.
I'm more inclined to share women's issues with my female
Mhm.
Yes,
co-workers and bosses than I am with one that is male, right? So there's that
absolutely.
sort of discernment as well. But I think that's part of the reason. But women should be able to at least talk to other women who
Mm.
work with them about this, and then they can sort of allude to it to their male counterpart
Mhm.
if that's not as comfortable.
Absolutely. I think even with like whether what age, if you're still menstruating or perimenopause or menopause, the side effects are one thing, but also how it affects your mental health. And I think I can't speak for the whole world or the country, but we've come a long way with and corporations with acknowledging the need to have services and support for understanding mental health.
Yeah.
But
Good.
people, men, I guess, don't always understand the connection where it's like perimenopause is going to affect your mental health. And sometimes,
Yeah.
like Regine said, you just may need a couple hours to like
Mhm.
recalibrate because you're wide awake staring at the ceiling, or the anxiety that came out of nowhere because your hormones are changing. You didn't struggle with anxiety before, but now you're anxious. It's not, I think, Bree, you said the word sensitive, and it's a sensitive topic, but
Yeah.
people who don't understand, and sometimes men that don't understand, think women are being overly sensitive, but these are real changes and things that are happening within our bodies that we have no control over.
Yeah, I struggle a lot with PMDD,
Mhm.
which, if you are listening and don't know, is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which causes really bad mental health in the week leading up to menstruation, like huge dips. And that affects me. That affects how fast I'm working. It makes me think I can't post a social media post today. Everything I write sucks. It does affect you. And again, it's not like I wanted to. It's not like
Mhm.
it's my choice. It's just unfortunately part of my reality. Glad that you mentioned that. And I'm also really glad that you went back to hair real quick because there's so much I could talk about with appearance of it all. And I do agree. Remote work, being able to remote work is so helpful for your employees and just creates such a better working environment to where they know that if something comes up, like a sick kid, it's going to happen. Those daycares, I think everyone's sick all the time. I have a nephew and it's awful.
It's a scam. It's
Mhm.
a complete scam.
You're paying to get sick.
Yep.
But like having that flexibility, it really does have an impact on your team
Yep.
because, they're not worried all the time or anxious or like, you don't have to worry about hoarding all your PTO days just in case something bad happens. And it's really made me sad to see so many companies, with the return to office mandate, with no flexibility worked in. Like I have a really good friend who they weren't gonna let her have time off to take her dad to his, cancer treatments.
Mhm.
Like, and, you tell her no, and then something happens, like, that's just gonna breed resentment, and, like, you're gonna lose that employee,
Mhm.
Like, so why not just take the time to build in a little bit of flexibility, when things come up?
Mhm.
So, I would love to, more people to start doing that. If anyone got anything from this conversation, let it be companies to have at least the option to work from home
Yeah,
when needed.
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Without feeling guilty.
Yeah.
Yes. Like
Or
my
being penalized.
Yeah.
yes.
It's like vacation days, right? Like back in the day, I had a conversation with an uncle a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, "I never took a sick day." And because I felt like if I took a sick day, then I would be marked, it would be noticed, right? And I may not get a promotion and what have you, right? So there's also those types of things as well, where some people may not even want to take, even though they have it available, they may not feel like they truly can take it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What is your experience, Regine, just being a mom of three
Yeah.
boys and
Yes.
having, sick children or school activities or sports? Like, how have you juggled that, or have you had employers that haven't been as supportive?
And then
No.
just to
Yeah,
add
yeah.
on to that real quick, I'd also
Mhm.
love to hear a little bit about like what your experience with maternity leave was. Like, were you working for a corporation where you had to like deal with that and go on their terms, or were you kind of a consultant at that point in your life too?
Yeah. So let me start with that and then I'll get to the experience, right?
Sorry, Jen.
So, no, no, no. So you're fine. So here's the deal. So before we got married, my husband and I agreed that I would stay at home when we had children. And so I worked up until a week after I gave birth to my oldest child. Okay. And then I thought, because of the number of children that we have, I have three for those of you listening. Currently, they are all in middle school. One's about to enter high school. And so it was a wild ride. I have three kids and they're 18 months apart because I have identical twins in there. Fun times, crazy times, lots of medication required for me, not for them. Um, but I fortunately did not have to request any maternity leave. I exited the workforce with the full belief that I may not be returning to the workforce in the capacity that I had left it in. And so when I came back to work, it was important to me, it was important to my family that I had employers that had flexible work schedules and opportunities for working parents. Because, you know, as the saying goes, even though a woman works full time, she still carries a majority of the mental load. And so I basically was doing everything I was doing before I was a stay-at-home mom, but add on top of that, going to work. And so they provided a lot of flexibility. I'm an early bird. So, for example, if I had to take kids to a doctor's appointment and I had a meeting that conflicted, I could reschedule that meeting. I could come in earlier. I could leave a little later, etc. And so flexibility was there because, as you know, when you work a salaried role, most of the time you're working exactly the required hours, but there's going to be seasons where you're going to be working less. And there's going to be seasons where you're going to be working a little bit more. And so they took all that into account. And so it wasn't like, you know, my kid is sick and, you know, I'm doing all of these things and rearranging meetings. And then I have to make it up next week. Right. It wasn't that sort of thing. It was very, very collaborative in the way that my schedule was made, especially when you take into account, I've worked at companies that are not based in the US. And so that to me provided the optimal flexibility because then I would have more daytime hours to do things that I needed to for my family. You know, something as simple as putting a load of laundry in the washing machine, you know, in between a meeting and then taking it out and putting it in the dryer, which saves a lot of time and a lot of mental load, you know, as a woman, whether you're a mom, you know, a single person that lives alone or, you know, somebody who's married, there's still things that a woman innately has to do, whether she is solo on her own or she has other people to take into consideration and account.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. I love, you know, local wisdom. We are remote, which is so nice. You know, at one of my previous companies, we were hybrid and I worked from home Monday and Fridays and I hated it. I actually willingly like drove to the office on Mondays and Fridays because I felt like I couldn't get any work done. And I now that I work from home with local wisdom, I realized it wasn't that I hated working from home and I thought it was an ADHD thing. It was just that I was working from home in a company that wasn't built for it and that they
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the support needed to work from home because even when in the office, I would describe myself as feeling like I was alone on an island. And so you work from home and then you're really just like isolated from everyone. Everyone was very heads down, work on their own. Um, but I love working from home now with local wisdom because it's, you know, we're all over the place, yet we still collaborate. We still check in. Like we're still hopping on calls and chatting and yapping and getting work done. And it's great. And the flexibility of being able
Yeah.
to go to a doctor's appointment or, you know, I have obviously pets. I don't have
Yeah.
human children, but I do have furry ones. And you know, my dog's 13, and when she has the health issue, I get really scared and have to take her to the vet. So, like the flexibility, I can't imagine how wonderful it is as a parent to be able
Yeah.
to work remotely. But this conversation has been wonderful. Before we wrap up today, for a woman listening who feels, you know, similarly, and has never had the ability to say it out loud, what else would you want her to hear before we go?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll leave you with, and this is a nice tie-in to everything that we have discussed today between the three of us, is therapy. Go to
Yes.
therapy, whether you feel like you need it or not, because things
Okay.
happen on a regular basis that sometimes you just need an unbiased person to listen to. And that'll help you with discernment and understanding yourself, and understanding those around you. But therapy for everyone, all the time, no matter, 18 plus, a lot of companies offer it as a benefit. So please do take, advantage of that, whether you go to see a therapist once a week, or once a month. Add that into your mental health, your self-care, those types of things, because it's better to, remove those feelings, those thoughts, those ideas out of your person, instead of holding them in all the time.
I love that. I love that you called out therapy because I agree. I think everyone at some point in their life should definitely be in it at least once, if not multiple times, because just talking to someone helps so much. Just getting all of those thoughts that are racing through your head that are building up inside of you. Finding a way to get those out is incredibly healthy, whether that be writing it down or just
Right.
sometimes you could talk to the wall and just get it all out. But I personally, I love a good brain dump is what I typically refer to them as because it just makes me feel lighter and a lot more clear-headed.
Yes.
Um, so I love the therapy call out.
I would jump in and say, I think the advice I shared it earlier, be yourself,
Yes.
you're enough. But there's this quote that I found in a book that's called Finding Sacred in the Ordinary. There's a specific chapter that I like, and I'm plugging Regine's book here, her Comms and Devotional guide book. But there's one of my favorites is where it says Finding Sacred in the Ordinary, and it's for comms professionals. Every word you write, every policy you shape, every experience you design becomes part of something bigger, not perfect, but intentional.
Mhm.
And that's something that, of course, the great Regine Nelson, but the intention of this, like it actually, I did pause and I don't remember offhand, but it did prompt a LinkedIn post where it's like, wait a minute, every email you write, it's like, do it with intention and find the purpose in it. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Mhm.
So I will take some inspiration from the book for my younger self.
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for mentioning Regine's book because I also want to give a chance for Regine to share anything else that she would like to promote, call out, anything that we could link down in the description below with our listeners for them to check out.
Yeah, definitely. So if you want to learn more about me, you can visit reginenelson.com. And yes, I am the author of the Comms and Culture Devotional. You can find it on my website. You can also find it on Amazon and everywhere books are sold.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you as well, Jen, for filling in as my co-host. I greatly appreciate it. Um, If you liked today's episode, please let us know in the comments. Obviously, very different. First episode without Pinaki and Chris. I'd love to hear your opinion on if you enjoyed it or not. Well, actually, maybe not if not. But resonated with you, just know that you are not alone. We are right there with you. And if you ever need any support or anything, feel free to leave it down in the comments. We're here to help you. We also have our Human at Work Reddit that will be live when this is going up. So definitely, if you ever have a story, question, or need advice, go over to our Reddit account where you can leave those. We'll definitely be looking for them. So thank you so much for hanging out with me this week, and I will see you next time.